if we take anyone from 200 years ago and put them into our lives, they would be like, I don't understand how they would ever not be grateful or how they would ever not be happy or any of those kind of things, because we just have so much that we just take for granted.
Yeah,
and now bringing it back to marriage, the same thing can happen in our marriages where we just become so accustomed and so used to the good things about our spouse that if we aren't intentional with voicing, recognizing the ways that we appreciate them and the things that they're good at and their strengths, then we'll just start to become ungrateful, discontent, and all of those kind of things.
Hey, 1 Degree fam, I'm Nathaniel.
And I'm Xan, and this is the 1 Degree podcast, where we talk about what it looks like to be married as followers of Jesus.
Look, we know that life gets full. Marriage, kids, work, church, sports, the list goes on and on. But we believe that a thriving marriage does not happen by accident.
Each episode will give you real conversations, practical tools, and biblical encouragement to help you connect deeply with your spouse and live on mission together.
So, whether you're folding laundry, driving to work, or maybe even working out, we're glad you're here with us.
Let's dive in.
What is up, 1 Degree? Bam!
I didn't know if you were waiting for me to come in or if you were going to finish that.
The loyal listeners just checked their phone.
What is up, 1 Degree fam? Welcome back to the comfy, cozy, virtual leather couch. That's right.
There it is.
Super excited that you're here with us. We're going to kick things off just with a bit of transparency. This morning was rough, or I should say last night was rough.
Oh, I felt like it was just another night in the Sibley house.
Oh, well, because I took care of everything.
What do you mean?
No, not actually. Well, Emery had an accident.
I took care of that one.
Yeah, and she came into our bed at like 11 o'clock or so, 11 o'clock-ish.
Yeah, it was like 10:45. I was just winding down, and then I heard her waking up in her room. And
well, then...
So she's in her bed, but that was sweet. She was just cuddling.
Yes, and then Asher woke up in the middle of the night, and I went and got him and brought him into our bed.
Yeah.
And he was in our bed, but he wasn't going back to sleep. And then Verity came into our bed. So we had all 3 kids in our bed, but they weren't going back to sleep. And at 5...
Asher was the problem.
Yes. At 5 o'clock, Asher was screaming and kicking and all this kind of stuff. And Emery was awake and Verity was somehow sleeping through it. And so...
I came up to get him some milk.
Yes. And so you got him some milk, and then I got him, and
What's the story? Where's the story going?
Got him back to sleep, and I was he was still screaming, and you were super tired. We were both super tired, and I got him back to sleep. I rocked him. I rubbed his back and got him back to sleep in his bed. And then I just got up and started my day, and Xan and Emery and Verity and Asher kind of went back to sleep. And this morning, I remember I was consciously thinking when you came up of oh, I wonder if she'll appreciate or recognize what I did.
And of rubbing his back?
Of getting him to sleep because he was losing it. And then you were oh, are you just going to throw him in his bed? And I was
I
no.
didn't say that.
You did. You did.
Oh, as you were leaving.
As I was leaving.
I thought you were talking about Emery, how she was Dad, did you just throw him in his bed?
No. But you were are you just going to throw him in his crib?
So is the moral of the story, I didn't express verbal appreciation.
You didn't express verbal appreciation, but this is where we're going into the episode because we're going to talk about what it looks like to have gratitude for your spouse, but...
You're just going to lecture me about how I need to be more grateful.
No. Because whenever this topic comes up, you might find yourself like me. You might find yourself like Nate Dogg over here and being yes, I wish my spouse would show more gratitude for me instead of looking inward first and being what does it look like for me to be grateful for my spouse? Because we talk about a lot, we have a phrase that ungratefulness breeds discontentment. And that's in any area of life, but especially in marriage when, the longer that you're together, the longer that you're married, you start to take for granted some of the attributes or some of the things that initially drew you to your spouse, and some of the things that you really appreciated about your spouse early on in marriage, you start to take those for granted. And then the things that, drive you crazy or the things that you don't like, you just become so fixated or focused on those, and it leads to discontentment. And so you have to be intentional about cultivating gratitude for your spouse. And that's what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot here because also in my sinful state, I could be like, oh, well, last night you were watching the national championship with friends and doing golf simulator while I was manning children. And
well, we got them to bed before I left.
Well, yes, but when I had to go in there, I'm talking about
Yeah,
you weren't asleep when you left. I had to keep going in there. And then having to do all the work for the podcast while you were gone. And so you can constantly play the scoreboard game, which we talked about in the last episode. But that wasn't what I was saying. So I was kind of just like thinking through this all.
So have a scoreboard.
No,
keep score.
What I was thinking in my head is something I've come back to a lot because we've said this. Maybe some people just truly don't have this sin struggle, and I'm projecting it. But I would wager that most people have this feeling of wanting to be appreciated for the things they do in every facet of their life. Like you want to have some recognition, even if it's like you don't want attention recognition. Like you don't want it to be like called out in your work meetings or like I'm picturing like your little circle roundup things at work or something or whatever that is. But you want to know that what you're doing is appreciated. I think that, and I feel I've talked to you about this. We have the Litany of Humility framed next to our bathroom vanity. It's been there for years. And it's like what I look at. I shouldn't say I can't. Siblings don't say I can't in our house, but it would take the most thorough teeth brushing ever to read the entire Litany of Humility. I've tried, but it's like the toothpaste starts like disintegrating and falling down my throat because it's so long. Yeah. But I'll usually read like the first part and then like at night I'll read the end of it. And it's kind of just a habit to read through it. And it is unironically extremely humbling. It's the idea of like from the desire of being recognized, deliver me.
Yeah.
And from the desire like that others may be chosen before me, that others may be
chosen and that I may be cast aside.
Yeah, I haven't memorized it necessarily, but it's just all the concept of like, Lord, give me the desire that other people would get recognition and I wouldn't. Lord, give me the desire for other people to be praised instead of me, that other people would be chosen instead of me, that other people would become more holy than me. And there's that caveat of like, given that I would be as holy as I need to be type thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I come back to that a lot because so often for me, probably it's like, I think my sin of choice of like, when we look at the Enneagram, which I know we're so many years from that. I've just recently like started thinking about it again because we started talking about it at work. And it reminded me of like, it honestly did just, I think it can be a good tool to bring things to your awareness. And for me, I'm the 3 achievement. And so my like sin that I'm often prone to is wanting to be seen as successful, wanting to be appreciated for my successes or wanting to be appreciated for my ability, whatever it is, and things I do. And so, I don't know, I feel like a lot of times my mental spirals start with how I am perceived. And so lack of recognition or something like that. And I start to get into like a funk mentally, subconsciously even. Like it's one of those, like, when you just feel off and I always like go through this whole thought process. Like, how did I get here? Like what has my brain, what was that original? You know how sometimes I'll be like, why do I feel a tension between us? And then it'll be like a random little thing that I feel like we missed each other.
Yeah.
I don't know. That happened in the car recently. And I was like, oh, it's because I said this and I felt like you perceived it differently. Anyway, that I'll like trace it back. And a lot of times when I trace it back, it's something about ultimately my pride of wanting some kind of recognition. So yeah, anyway, I've been coming back to the Litany of Humility a lot. And I think it's very relevant in marriage of doing things to go along with last week, serving, not out of the desire to be reciprocatedly, that's probably not a word, served. And on the flip side, expressing gratitude without constantly feeling this need to have gratitude expressed in return.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's interesting that you bring up kind of your sin struggle. I think for me, it's more of this reciprocal nature is what I struggle with and I talked about it even in the story, the lead up for today. I talked about it last week where I want to have this desire to serve you with no, reciprocation. And that should be like the holiest desire that we have. But I find myself sometimes thinking of, it would be so much easier to do this if Xan did this, or it'd be so much easier for me to just voice my gratitude if Xan would voice gratitude for me, and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of where my mind starts instead of looking inward, my natural inclination. And I think if we're being honest, a lot of people's natural inclination is to look outward and look to other people. And I think that's why obviously Jesus
look to other people. What do you mean?
Look to other people and expect them to either make the first step or make the first move, or not
or
in
at
that
least,
sense.
Or at least, like you said, reciprocate it. Like rise to your standard that you create.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Fair.
So today, then what we're talking about is, what does it look like to be intentional with cultivating gratitude for your spouse? Because ungratefulness breeds contentment. So how do we discontentment? And so how do we breed contentment is by being grateful for our spouse. And I think number one, it starts with, and I know we might sound like a broken record.
Good. That's the whole point. I don't know what you're about to say, but
it goes back to, for us, our weekly marriage meeting, because in our weekly marriage meeting, we have a question of, we have two different sections, or two different areas where we kind of address this of being grateful for each other. The first one, we have a question of, how did I serve you well last week? And so you're having to think through, for Xan, or for me, how did Xan serve me well? How do I voice that to her? What's something she did that I really felt appreciative about and I felt served in? And so there's that question, and we each ask that of each other. And then at the end, we have 3 things that we appreciate about each other. That's how we have to end kind of the first series of questions, is by voicing 3 specific things we appreciate about each other. Because naturally, kind of like I alluded to and was saying earlier, it is easy to just focus on or key in on the areas that you want your spouse to grow. And I'm not saying that we don't want to voice maybe concerns that we have or voice areas that we think our spouse can grow. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that we cannot only focus on weaknesses. We need to also voice and recognize areas that we appreciate about our spouse and the strengths that they have. And so in our weekly marriage meeting, we have kind of 2 areas that we do that in with those questions.
Yeah. I think another way, am I good to go on to another way? It's just that idea, we come back to this a lot, the whole idea of things are muscles that you have to train, and what you look for grows. And so when you have a constantly negative outlook where you're looking for critiques, you will find them,
Yeah.
And that goes in every area of life. If you are in your work looking at things critically, that could be an asset, like if your job is to strategically analyze areas of improvement. So, like you want to cultivate that. In your marriage, that might not be the healthiest thing to continually cultivate. What can your spouse grow in? What can your spouse, you want to do that in yourself, but you don't want to do that in another person. And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add is that it's not necessarily wrong, because part of that question is, hey, how did I serve you well last week? How can I best serve you this week? And so that's an opportunity to voice an area that you maybe would appreciate your spouse growing in. It's not one or the other. It's not, you can only see the good, or you can only see the bad or the negatives or the weaknesses. I think it's a both and, with a primary focus on, hey, appreciation for your spouse, but also not neglecting that we're all sinful. We all have room and opportunities to grow. We need to start by looking inward at how we can grow ourselves, and then also potentially voicing to our spouse how they can grow.
Yeah, 2 things with that. The question is, how can I best serve you this week? It used to be, how can I serve you better this week? And we intentionally flipped that language because it wasn't about a critique. It wasn't rooted in this didn't go well. It's just looking at this week, what will be most optimal to serve me with what we have. So I feel like that language was intentional, to have it not be rooted in a negative framing, but more so a positive
framing. Yeah.
But the other thing, with that whole idea of what you're looking for grows. So on the flip side of, if you're looking through a critical lens, you're going to see more flaws. If you are orienting yourself. That's the whole idea of a gratitude journal.
Yeah.
That's the most mainstream advice at this point, but it's some mainstream advice I can get behind of it is never in vain to write down more things you're grateful for every day, because you're going to train yourself, and you're going to train your eyes, you're going to train your heart, your brain, all of your whole self will be looking for the good and the things that you're grateful for. And I feel like we do this a lot with the kids. This was something yesterday morning. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was something with Emery. And she was up here and she's like, Mom, it's so something. And I was like, aren't we just so grateful for this morning with being able to hear the birds chirping, and like the other kids were sleeping in. And it's just, I feel like you feel a biological like oxytocin response to gratitude, like I'm surely there's some science out there that validates that. But so practically speaking, the first two things we've said, have a weekly marriage meeting and have those touch points of gratitude where you're explicitly having to think through them and then articulate them. I think that's a good skill, because when you're asked, how did I best serve you this week? Practically what's going on in my brain is a reel of all the ways I've been served. And then, so that's like getting some reps in of looking for those, even if it's retroactive.
Yep.
And then thinking through how to articulate which one was the most meaningful and why. And you get better at that. You get better at explaining like why this really did serve you well. And sometimes they're more obvious, and sometimes they're a smaller thing that you can call out. And then the second thing, just training yourself to look for those things in the moment, I think would be so that one's more looking back than looking in the moment of, and maybe as you're doing that, having a conscious like reminder on your phone every hour to put a note, like to add to a list in your notes of things you're grateful for throughout the day, or like texting each other, what's something you're grateful for right now, and looking, because that's something that we did for a while. I remember anytime one of us had a complaint of like, if work's just a lot right now, or I'm going crazy at home, or whatever it is, it's like, what's something you're grateful for right now? And it can seem maybe dismissive, or like it doesn't negate, it can seem that way, but it doesn't negate. It's not saying like, that's not hard for you right now.
Yeah.
It's just saying like, okay, both and like it is hard for you. And what is something you're grateful for right now? Like, how can you see good in something else happening?
Yeah. I just go back to, I remember my old boss like 6 years ago. And it's so simple, but it was so profound for me at that time, of just that idea of what's the difference between a good day and a bad day, your attitude.
Yeah.
And in so many areas of life, we are so privileged and blessed. And anytime I read, the girls and I are reading about Little House on the Prairie and how excited they get about wood floors and how excited they get about glass windows. And they're like, this is the best thing ever to have glass windows. And meanwhile, we're over here complaining, and we have air conditioning and heat, and we have hot showers whenever we want them, and we have cars that can drive us places. And it really is all about that perspective and the mindset that you have. And we naturally look for things to be ungrateful about. We have to train, like Xan was saying, we have to train our minds to look for things that we are grateful for. And I think that affects the entirety of our lives. When we fail to be grateful, like, you take anyone from 200 years ago and you put them into the lives that we have, pretty much anyone, if you were listening to this podcast, if we take anyone from 200 years ago and put them into our lives, they would be like, I don't understand how they would ever not be grateful, or how they would ever not be happy, or any of those kind of things, because we just have so much that we just take for granted.
Yeah,
and now bringing it back to marriage, the same thing can happen in our marriages, where we just become so accustomed and so used to the good things about our spouse that if we aren't intentional with voicing, recognizing the ways that we appreciate them and the things that they're good at and their strengths, then we'll just start to become ungrateful, discontent, and all of those kind of things.
Yeah, that's good.
There's another thing. There was a story on Diary of a CEO. There's this money guy that he's had on a couple of different times, but he always talks about, I think it's his mom or his grandma, because they're always giving tips for how to accumulate wealth and all this kind of stuff. But he talks about, I can't remember which, his mom or his grandma. He says that she lives on, I think, $2,000 a month or something like that. And she is the happiest person that he knows. And it's all because she doesn't have this mentality of, oh, I just want a bigger house, or I just want to go on a nicer vacation, or I just want to do X, Y, or Z. She is content with the money that she has, and it allows her to thrive and be incredibly happy with the life that she has. And he says that for most people, the life that she has is just like, oh, wouldn't you want to have more money, or wouldn't you want to travel more, or do this or that? But she's just so content and grateful for what she does have, that, and he said she's like the happiest person that he knows. And so it just goes back to that idea that your perspective on life shapes your contentment, shapes your happiness, shapes the way you live your life far more than you realize and know, more than your circumstance, like your perspective on life, more than the external circumstances. Now, don't get me wrong, that's a broad statement. There are some pretty horrific external circumstances that could impact your life, but by and large, your external circumstances play less of a role than your perspective on your life.
Yeah. And so bringing that back to marriage, which I feel like we keep saying.
Yeah.
But your spouse, again, so same thing. There are definitely spouses who would be a lot harder to see, like the circumstance of the spouse would be harder, to find things to be grateful for than other spouses, just inherently. There are different not levels of humans, but you know what I'm saying, qualities in them. But ultimately, you are going to be more inclined to see those things that you're grateful for. And again, I feel like we always get into this nuance of like assuming that you're in a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
You will foster that gratitude, that contentment in your marriage, which is really important to, like to cultivate contentment in your marriage,
Yeah.
You don't know.
No. I know what you're
I'm saying I feel like that is where people get into the whole like, oh, well, it'd be better if I were married to somebody like this or that, because you lose that gratitude for who your spouse is,
Yeah, no, for sure.
How do we bring this home? I was going to say we should wrap up with saying things that we're grateful for.
Yeah. We can do that in a second. No, I like that. I want to wrap that up. Just kind of real life example. There was one other thing. I just wanted to talk about a little bit of the nuance of, addressing someone who is in a really difficult marriage or tough or anything like that, and what you would say.
Oh, you always put me on the spot with these.
Well, you do it first, and then you could put me on the spot.
Okay, so what would I say to somebody who's like, okay, it's really hard to find things I'm grateful for? I mean, I think my mind goes to, you married them for a reason in the first place, So there was something there, assuming that it wasn't a crazy,
what if it was like I just had an awful life and I was just looking for any way of escape, and they were the only option?
Which is valid, and I don't know. You always put me for these like crazy out there situations. It's like, I don't know. Talk to somebody in your church who knows you and knows the people and can provide you tangible help and tangible advice and pray with you and stuff. But I think in general, for the person who's like, man, it's just hard. Like, it's real. If I'm honest, my heart is hardened towards my spouse and I'm jaded towards them. And it's just really hard for me to cultivate things that I'm grateful for. The typical Xan, the way I always start these, but it's what I genuinely believe. I think that you should first pray for a softened heart. I think it's going to start from that inside out perspective shift of, Lord, like, give me the eyes to see them how you see them. Lord, give me the eyes to remember that they are made in your image, and give me the eyes to see ways that they're made in your image, and maybe start some kind of tangible list where it could be as simple as, I appreciate that he cleaned up his own dish, or I appreciate that he went to work today, like that he is providing for our family. I appreciate, because maybe he doesn't clean up his own dish, but he does go to work. Or I appreciate that I can stay home with the kids, or I mean, whatever it is that.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Go ahead. I just was thinking, like, start with
Those
maybe the
small
things that
things.
feel like not bare minimum, but feel just, yeah, they're not above and beyond necessarily, but start with the gratitude for those things, because to some people, again, it comes back to perspective. To the single parent who is
Mm-hmm.
really struggling, those areas would be a huge blessing, you know?
And maybe it is, hey, I appreciate that you do most of the driving, or I appreciate that, um, you, I, I don't know what
Or
it
a
is, like
good parent
a good
or
parent
whatever.
or whatever it may be, but you just look for those little areas and then you voice them,
Yeah.
and just those little things, I just go back to the driving example. You're in the car and it's just like, hey, I appreciate that you do most of the driving and that I don't even have to think about it, or something like that. And
Mhm.
that's a really easy way to voice appreciation for something that's small. And so start by looking for it. And then secondly, without being patronizing, because you could be like, oh, I appreciate that you finally cleaned up your own dish after yourself. That's
Yeah.
not going to lead to anything good.
Backhanded.
Yeah, exactly. But you could say, hey, I really appreciate that you helped me by cleaning up the dish, or cleaning up your dish, and all of that kind of stuff. And so starting with that, voicing it, because I think when you voice your appreciation, I think for a lot of people, that will also help foster and breed a desire to pursue behaviors like that. Whenever you voice appreciation for
Yeah.
me doing something, it's like, oh yeah, I do want to be like that. I want to be that kind of person. I want to help in that kind of way.
Just don't voice the appreciation manipulatively to get more of it.
Yes,
'Cause I
exactly.
feel like simple tendencies.
No, and that comes back to sinful tendencies, but so it starts with prayer, looking for ways, looking for things you appreciate about them, and then voicing those,
Yeah,
even if they're small.
All right, let's do rapid fire like it's a
Yeah,
weekly meeting, marriage
like it's
meeting.
a weekly marriage meeting.
What do you want to do? 3 things?
Yeah, 3 things is what we would
Honestly,
normally do.
sometimes it takes us a little minute because we're at the end of the meeting and
Yeah.
we're tired, so we'll try to be quick.
Okay, so I would say first thing I really appreciate about you is that you really love and value the kids' education, and you it's really cool for me to see how Emery has learned how to read, and she's an incredible reader, and Verity is starting to learn how to read, and it's just really cool because I love reading to them. I don't love sitting and having the patience to teach them how to
It's
read.
a shocking thing about you.
Yeah, I know.
I would have thought you would have the patience for homeschool, but you don't.
It's just it's a weird thing. I think as they develop and advance, as they get into
You can take them from B to, but
yes,
you don't like A to B.
I don't like A to B, exactly. But so seeing you thrive in that and what you've done is really cool, and I really really appreciate it. That's number 1. Are we just gonna go straight down, like me do all 3, then you do all 3, or are we gonna go back and forth?
Sure, you could go.
Um,
I'm not gonna think about yours during it though, so I might take a minute.
Number 2, I would say, is that you are able to handle a lot. You are a very high capacity person. You balance work and the kids and the house and like just the business and all of that kind of stuff. I think for a lot of people, it would be very difficult to live a day in your shoes, and you do it very, very well. And you are just a very high capacity person who can balance a lot. And I really appreciate that about you. And then I really appreciate about how you care about physical health, like not for the sake of looks or appearances, but I want to eat quality food because it makes me feel nourished and it helps me have energy to go about my day. And I want to work out not because I want, toned arms or
I
whatever
don't
it
want
may
those.
be. But I want to work out because it makes me feel good, and I want to be healthy, and I want to have strong bones and be able to run around with grandkids. And that's kind of just the motivation for working out. So just that love and appreciation for health in general as a whole. Yeah.
Okay, mine. I'd say first, I really appreciate your leadership skills and interpersonal skills in the workplace. I feel like I learn a lot from you in that regard. I feel like you're just very good at leading a team and communicating with higher ups, direct reports, all the things.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's a gift that you have. Actually, I would say it's even more than a gift that you have. It's just like a skill I've seen develop in our time of like being married. Like in your last job, I don't know. I feel like it's something you've really cultivated. And I would say I really appreciate your discipline. Like as you've been training for this Spartan, we were talking about that this weekend. It's like you've gone from a couple miles to 13 miles, and it hasn't been. I feel like a lot of people when they're training for something, it's like at the expense of the family. Like, okay, well, you're also gone all the time for your long runs. And, I don't know. I listen to those fitness podcasts where that's kind of just the reality of like, oh, I'm training for the Ironman. I'm training for this thing. And it's just like, you don't see me much. Granted, you're not training for an Ironman.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, cool. You're gone for the Sunday, Asher's nap on Sunday for a few hours while you're doing your long runs. Like you purposely stack it in a way that's not obtrusive to the family. And like a lot easier for me to support you in it too, because it's not necessarily, upending our family. But I also respect the discipline of all that. Wow. I didn't have Do Not Disturb on and we got this far without a single thing. That's crazy. Then lastly, I would say, I said this, I think, on our Sunday meeting, but I appreciate that you handle all of our finances to the point, not in an alarming way. I have access to everything, but like, I don't think about it at all. I just spend the money. Just earn it and spend it. I don't look at it. I don't even know how much I'm earning. People could read into this. I fully can. I'm capable and I am allowed to look at anything. I just don't have to because he handles it all. I just get told on April 7th that I'm cut off from Amazon for the rest of the month. That's a real life conversation that happened this morning. I was like, Amazon, this is a thing we have in our marriage, and I'm sure we've talked about it on this podcast. He's like, no more Amazon for the rest of the month. I'm like, that is like saying...
I did not say it like that. I was like...
Yes, okay, kindly, whatever. But I'm like, it's not Amazon.
Kindly,
it's
whatever.
It's like, it could be dishwasher pods. It could, just because it's from Amazon doesn't, like, we could go... So I can go to Target and get the same thing. It's like, you just see Amazon as, like, extraneous expenses versus, like, a retailer that sells everything under the sun.
I understand. I get that.
Okay. That was the point. I appreciate that you handled the finances.
Yeah. There we go. Love it.
All right. That was wrapping it up.
1 degree shift, I would say, is that have a weekly marriage meeting if you aren't already. But then if you are having it and you're having those questions of, you're answering those questions of how your spouse is serving you well and the things you appreciate about your spouse, what I would say is that this week you could start keeping a list, whether it be in your phone, whether it be a journal of just one thing a day that you could write down of something you appreciated about your spouse.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to give a little plug because so many of our marriage challenges that we do daily marriage challenges. We send you an email every day. And so many of them have to do with gratitude. Like as you were saying that,
yeah.
We have some where it's like, write a note to your spouse today, things you're grateful for, start a list and then give it to them at the end of the week. We've had so many of those challenges recently. I'm going to give the plug. If you're not getting our daily marriage challenge, that's such an easy way to...
I'm sure
it's your phone being delivered. So I was going to make sure there was no signature needed. Okay, there isn't a signature needed. Guys, the UPS guy was out there and I was like, okay, that would really stink if we're just like sitting here ignoring him and then you don't get your phone today. Anyway, so sign up for that. It's onedegreemarriage.com/challenge. Okay, have a great week.
Love you, 1 Degree fam.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of the 1 Degree Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd be so appreciative if you take just a few seconds to leave a rating and a quick review. We love to hear your feedback, and those ratings really do help make it easier for others to find this podcast.
And if you want to continue this chat or share your takeaways, we'd love to hear from you. Head on over to our Instagram at the 1 Degree Podcast and leave a comment or send us a DM. We can't wait to hear from you. Catch you next week, 1 Degree fam.